This conference will now be recorded.
All right, this is Len Sierra for AnCan's Advanced Recurrent Prostate Cancer video chat on March 28th, 2023. We want to acknowledge our sponsors, Bayer, Pfizer, whoops, disappeared. Bayer, Pfizer, Myovant, Janssen, Myriad, Telix, Foundation Medicine, and yes, thank you very much, sponsors. Okay, so we are going to get started. Rick, you still want to go first, Rick, right?
Well, I'll just give everybody a quick update. First of all, a huge thank you to everybody who is on this in the group right now, who wrote to the FDA, everybody who will listen to this recording. Thank you so much for writing to the FDA regarding the Pluvicto shortage. This is getting to be mega. As of today, the legislature brought something to the notice of the president about the drug shortages, and one of the named drugs was Pluvicto. There were 4 or 5 named drugs, including aspirin and ibuprofen, which I don't really get. But we are focused on Pluvicto because, as you know, there is a shortage of Pluvicto. It's being manufactured largely in Italy. There's a new plant being built in Indianapolis, which won't be ready for another probably close to 12 months. But there's also a plant in Melbourne, New Jersey, and that plant in Melbourne, New Jersey is authorized by the FDA to make what's called investigational or research doses. And so many of you who got Pluvicto during the managed access phase before the FDA approval actually received those doses from Melbourne, New Jersey, because they were allowed to make them. We put in a triage proposal. We spoke to the FDA, we spoke to Pluvicto, and we spoke to the Society of Nuclear Medicine and Molecular Imaging, SNMMI. And so far, we have gotten very positive response from both the FDA and Pluvicto and Novartis. SNMMI, frankly, is useless, and I hope they hear this. I've reached out to their executive president. I've reached out to the medical, the doc, and they are dragging their heels. They did ask their membership to send a letter, but they asked them to send it to the wrong person, and also to a person who'd left the FDA, and they included bad email addresses. And they're paying a lobbyist for this. So at the same time, it may well be their efforts that have brought this to the attention of the legislature. I don't know. They haven't claimed it, but it's possible. So what's happened this week? Well, about 100 of you have responded, which is amazing. Thank you so much. Enough that the head of the CDER, which stands for the drug research and something agency, I forget, but the head of that go ahead.
Yeah, that's
Center.
Forget it. I had it in my head and then it went out. Sorry.
Okay. Well, I'll find it after I'll find it and put it anyway. But she's a lady called Dr. Patrizia Cavazzoni, a friend of Len's, a lanceman of Len's, and she has been wonderful. She's actually replied to a couple of people individually, and one of her lieutenants, Val Janssen, who is head of drug shortage. I wouldn't like to be in her shoes today after this report after this move in the legislature got filed. Anyway, she called me yesterday. She actually called me. The phone went Maryland. I thought, oh my gosh, could it be? And it was the FDA. And I will tell you that your letters have gotten their attention. I think the attention was high. It's now very high, and it's even higher today with the government involved, with the House involved. However, we had 3 triage actions, none of which have been implemented, all of which the FDA endorses. Those 3 triage measures are, number 1, for the SNMMI to create triage criteria for men with an urgent need, which is standard triage procedure. So if somebody has a real urgent need, they jump the queue. Secondly, we want to minimize wastage, and as part of that, we have asked Novartis and SNMMI to institute measures so that men have to declare 48 hours before the dose is due that they're fit to get it, which then gives us 48 hours if they're not fit, because as most of you know, there's only 5 days from manufacturing to the time you can apply this. And the third and the most important thing is that there may well be excess capacity to make Pluvicto in Milburn, New Jersey, because at the height of the managed access, we believe a lot more doses were coming out of Milburn, New Jersey than are coming out today, where there are only very few trials. For example, Rich Jackson, his dose is coming, he's in a trial, but there aren't that many Pluvicto trials. There's one in Canada that I was told about earlier by Richard, but the capacity is down. And since the FDA has approved all the capacity to make investigational doses, we've said, well, why can't we max out the number of investigational doses, and the difference between that number and however investigational doses are needed, let's switch to commercial, because you're comfortable and you believe those doses are safe. I don't know what the numbers are, I'm just picking numbers, but if there was 100, for example, doses that they could make and they're only supplying 20, that would give us 80 extra doses, which we now switch from investigational to commercial. And the FDA said, that's a great idea, we're willing to do that, but nobody asked us. So I have since contacted Novartis. This morning, I got the name of the president of the division and wrote to him as well. And keep your fingers crossed, because if they prepare the proposal, the FDA said they need to send us a proposal. If they prepare it, we may get an immediate fix. I don't know how big, but we could get an immediate fix. That is where we are, and we keep pushing, and hopefully we're going to save some lives and make a difference. And that's what we're doing.
Thank you, Rick. Bravo.
Question?
And yes, I believe your efforts will probably save lives. Thank you.
Can I
Yes,
ask a
thank
question?
you.
What's the difference between the investigational doses and the commercial doses? Why can't New Jersey just put out all the doses it can?
Because the FDA has to be sure that those doses prepared for commercial sale are safe for the public, and they have not approved that plant to make those commercial doses that are safe for the public. Who knows what paperwork it is? There is no difference between the doses. This is the problem. So what we're saying is, just allow us to call them commercial and not research. And they've said, sure, if the company asks us, we'll do it.
Right.
Okay, Len.
All right. Thank you, Rick. And we will start with Don Needham, a new member in Bend, Oregon. Don, tell us how old you are and when you were first diagnosed.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm 64. I was diagnosed in May 2021.
And what was your Gleason score and PSA at that time?
initial Gleason score was seven. Was a 7. It was 3 plus 4, and my what was the second question? I'm sorry.
The PSA.
PSA was about 5.9, 5.9.
Okay, so you said your initial Gleason was a 7, but did that change?
Yes, it did. I did. By the way, I've watched a couple recordings of this support group, and I'm very impressed with you guys. Um, so yes, I went and I did what many fools, I guess, do, which is I went with the first. I wanted the thing, the cancer out of me, and I went with the first doctor I had. At that time, I was living in Central California, so I was in San Luis Obispo area, and there was a surgeon there that had done. Uh, he said over 1,000 prostatectomies. I went with him and got my prostatectomy in August of 2021. I was NED for 14 months, and then and subsequently I'd moved to Bend, Oregon, to be closer to my sons and granddaughter and all those good things. And I got there's a cancer center here at St. Charles Medical Center. I got a urologist here that I had already established before the cancer recurred. Um, and then all along I was getting ultrasensitive PSA, so everything was negative sign 0.008 up until December of this past year. It popped up to 0.03. No negative sign was detectable. And so urologist here said, let's wait a while and take another PSA. So we did that and it jumped up to 0.05. And then the next time they took it, it was 0.09. So it was moving quickly. My doubling time was less than 3 months. And so it was on my radar and on his.
So
So
Don, when they did the prostatectomy, did they
oh,
reevaluate your Gleason score?
yes, I apologize. I skipped over that. Yes, they did. And my Gleason was 4 plus 4 with tertiary 5, pattern 5. So it was significantly more involved than the initial biopsy. I had the old school biopsy. So my grade was 3 TB, NOMO, I think is how you read it. I could be wrong on that. And I apologize, I'm probably not as far along as on the acronyms as you guys. And so I went
So
up
no
to,
lymph node involvement, no bone
no,
metastases. Right.
no,
Okay.
on the
Now,
post-op
Don, how
pathology,
did they determine that? What type of scan?
um, they
I
did
think that
not,
was I think he meant that was his post-prostatectomy pathological staging.
indeed I did. That's what I
Oh,
meant.
okay.
Yeah,
But did you have any type of scans?
I did not. I did not have any scans after that. Um, so once we hit the third PSA of '09, we decided to go up to OHSU, the Knight Prostate Center here in Oregon, and get a second opinion on, or really almost like a first opinion. My urologist here, because my pathology had jumped to Gleason 8, and I had what do you call it? The extra.
Scapular extension.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
I
and
had that.
let me just add that for those of you who don't know, T3B means seminal vesicle invasion, which is not a good sign.
Right. Yeah. Yes, indeed, that's true. So they wanted to start me on, and doubling time was less than 3 months, and because recurrence was less than 2 years. And subsequently, I've read that when you get recurrence after prostatectomy in less than 2 years, that's a high risk uh, thing, and so they wanted to start me on radiation, and they wanted to do 38 fractions, and then they were going to put me on ADT Lupron for 6 months here at the Cancer Center in Bend. So we went up to OHSU, and they had like a little council group that met with us. A very impressive group up there, and the consensus there was basically spot on with what the Cancer Center here in Bend was saying. They were suggesting 6 months Lupron, and the issue, and radiation. The issue being the $1 million question at that time was, should they radiate the prostate bed and the surrounding lymph nodes before they could actually confirm that it was still confined to the prostate bed, before a PSMA scan, PET scan would work and find it, because my PSA was still too low? Or should they, because it was aggressive, should they radiate, do ADT, and head it off? So that was the question. And because I had a Decipher score that came back at 0.91, so that was very high. I realize that's just a probability score, but so what have I done? I came back to Bend, and because of the proximity, we are working with the Bend Cancer Center here, and I got the radiation. I'm on day 34 out of 38, so I'm almost done with radiation. And I'm 2 months into ADT, that wonderful drug. And yeah, I need, I've listened to you guys on the recordings that I've been able to listen to. I need some camaraderie, some support, and some more knowledge. Am I doing the right thing? Am I heading down the right road? Have I done anything wrong? I guess, it's too late to change, jumping into the prostatectomy, boat when I did. But I did it anyways, and I don't know if I regret it or not. I wouldn't have had the post-op pathology to know that I had a 4+4 Gleason with tertiary 5 in there, if I had not done the prostatectomy, or at least I don't know how I ever would have known that. Does that
So
give
Don,
you?
38 sessions sounds like they decided to do the prostate bed and the whole pelvic region. Is that right?
They did. Yep,
And you have only 4 sessions left?
I do.
So you said, I think you said I thought you said 2 weeks into ADT. They must have started the ADT
No, I'm 2 months
what,
into ADT.
2 months. Okay.
Yeah, it's just about plus or
Okay.
minus a week, I guess. I'll get another shot. I got 3 month shot, so I'll get another shot in late April or early May.
Don, are you working with a medical oncologist or are you still with this urologist?
I am still with the urologist and the
You
radiation
need, you need, you
oncologist.
need to get a medical oncologist on board, whether it's at OSU. If they don't have one in Bend, find one at OSU. You need an expert in this thing because you
Right,
got a
Peter.
long journey ahead of you.
So that's one of the things I learned from listening to your recordings. And I talked to my radiation oncologist yesterday, and he said, well, based on where you are, you have your doctor's day once a week with your RO.
Right.
And he said, because I'd already learned this from you guys from afar. And he said, I asked for a referral, and I can still do it, get a referral from my general practitioner if I want for OHSU. But he said, based on where you're at, it's better that we wait and see what happens with your PSA after that we're done with radiation and after you've been off ADT for a while. He said, if you want to establish a relationship with a medical oncologist, I can set it up for you. It doesn't hurt, but I don't think he's going to give you anything that we're not presently doing for you.
Right. And I'd agree with that. We don't always agree here, Don, and I would agree with you and your oncologist. I disagree with Peter. This is a different situation. This is immediate follow-up. And so very often in the situation of immediate follow-up, the first doctor to get involved after the urologist is the radiation oncologist. And if they're on top of their game, that's just fine. This isn't a recurrent situation where it's come back after a year, 2 years, you're not sure where to go. And
well, it is recurrent. It is recurrent, right? Because
well, I mean, you had your RP. When did you have your RP?
August 21.
Right, and so in August, so 8/21 is when you had the RP, and within
PSA
12,
started rising in December of 2020.
right. So it's not like it's been gone for a while and then it's come back. You pretty much know where you. I mean, this is the way that I see it. I think the reason for the need for a medical oncologist, something we were discussing earlier on today with Richard Wassersug and Dr. John in a different meeting, is that if you have side effects from the ADT, then neither the urologist nor the radiation oncologist are qualified to work with you on those side effects. But the medical oncologist is trained in internal medicine. Now, in my own case, I didn't have surgery. I opted for 2 types of radiation and 28 months of hormone therapy. And in the midst of that hormone therapy, I was suffering certain side effects, which were under the control of internal medicine. And I was at Kaiser and I said, I need to see a medical oncologist because this is not your field. And I think that what your doc is saying, where you've sort of transitioned right the way through, is yes, you're in good shape. We've got you under control. We don't really need a medical oncologist. Now, that said, there are a couple of questions that you might want to pose that a medical oncologist might bring up. There are a couple of questions you might want to pose. For example, what ADT are you on?
Lupron.
So you might want to say, in my case, what about the evidence for adding abiraterone? Right? And that's a valid discussion. And frankly, I would agree with Peter, if you're going to challenge there, you may want the input of a medical oncologist on whether to add the abiraterone. The problem is that these docs, like the ROs, they've always done this just with a single agent. How long are they leaving with 4+4? How long are they leaving you on ADT?
He said 6 months.
I would be challenging that. Now, that's controversial, but I would definitely be challenging that with 4+4. Problem being that there is one study that they're all relying on now, which says 6 months is enough. But then we see the guys come back and the disease hasn't been nailed. And in the past, what they were doing for 4+4, 4+5, 5+5 was at least 18 months with salvage radiation. But now when new studies come up, and we've seen this again, the doctors are all relying on 6 months on the basis of do no harm. So there again, I would say, if you want to challenge them on that basis, yes, you are going to need an oncologist. You are going to need a medical oncologist. So I don't disagree with Peter. Maybe I came on too strong. But I also see where your guy is coming from. Peter, you have a right to rebuttal.
Yeah, I mean, the flag went up immediately for me when I realized he wasn't on a second line drug and nobody was suggesting it even. So
Yeah.
I think if it was me, I would get a medical oncologist on board. I think it's beyond the urologist at this point, especially if you've had your prostate removed. What's a
It's,
urologist going to
it's,
do
it's
at this
it's
point?
not the urologist, it's the radonc, Peter.
Right, but he's going to be gone in a few weeks too.
Yeah, but the radoncs usually stick with the patient.
He
The
said he
Oh,
would
radonc,
stick. Yeah, he said he would stick with me,
right?
but the urologist was going to be the quarterback.
Okay.
That was his
Let's,
quote.
how about
Rick,
Rich Wasserstrom? You got something to? Oh,
maybe
sorry,
your
Len.
radiation oncologist stuck with you, but mine sure didn't. After he was finished, he didn't want to know about any issues I had. He directed me to a medical oncologist.
right, mine too. Yep, mine too. I'd get out of Dodge.
Let's see
Go
what
ahead,
Rich
Richard
Wasserstrom has
Wasserstrom.
to say.
We can't hear you, Richard. No, can't hear you. Well, no. Fiddle around with it. We'll get back to you. Dr. John, do you
What
have
do you say, Len?
what?
What's your opinion, Len?
I would line up a medical oncologist. Yeah.
A GU let's
A G,
point out a GU medical oncologist, because the guy in
yeah,
Bend is not going to refer you to a GU med onc, Don. He's
yeah.
going to refer you to one of his local people. What you need is somebody like what's her name, Jacqueline. What's her last name at OHSU? I'll find it and put
Can,
it in.
I'd
can you hear me
also
now?
medical.
Yeah,
Oh,
we can hear
okay. We
you.
Can
can
you
hear
hear?
you now, Richard. Go ahead.
All right. So for some of you may know this, I have a focus on managing the side effects of hormonal therapy. And whereas there's a discussion about where you should go next if you need to go forward, I would like to hear how you're doing in terms of the ADT side effects, what you're
Suck.
doing to manage them, what ones you're experiencing, what were you told about how to manage them?
So exercise. I ramped up my exercise. I'm doing weights every other day, and I'm doing cardio on the odd days. Um, but my
When
energy
you
is
say
so
you,
low.
yeah, when you say your cardio, are you doing getting up to a sweat? Are you pushing hard enough to be sweating?
I sweat easily. It doesn't take much,
Okay.
and I'm not. It's not like the old days. I mean, I'm riding 30 minutes on a stationary bike. We still have snow on the ground outside here. Um, so 30 minutes on a stationary bike every other day is what I'm doing, and then I walk my dogs a mile or so. And I'm so out of breath after walking the dogs on with the hills here that I've never
Did you
experienced anything like this in my life.
did you get a cardiac workup in advance of going on the ADT?
Yes, I
Have
did.
you had a okay, and you're okay heart wise and all that?
Yes, I'm okay heart-wise.
Okay, hot flashes?
A little flushes, I guess, but not hot flashes. No,
Okay.
I'm
All
on the
right.
lookout for them.
Okay. Well, yeah.
But my
Don't look for
joints,
them. We'll find you
yeah,
if you're gonna get them.
my joints are very achy, and I don't know if that's ADT. And my muscles are sore all the time.
Well, okay. That they've told you you're fit to exercise.
Yes,
Yes. All right. Well, my only thoughts are to try to push it if you can, assuming your cardiovascular situation is valid. I mean,
I
you're
haven't, yeah, put
eligible
on
to.
any weight yet. Um, I
Okay.
monitor that. I mean, I monitor my blood pressure and some of those
Okay.
type things.
Okay. All right. Because if you're gonna, it sounds like you may be extending the ADT. You may find that if you go off it now, you may have to go back on it later. If you do the doublet that is adding in something like apatulamide or enzalutamide is appropriate, but the side effects get worse. They don't get better when you add in additional drugs. So the fact that you're exercising sounds perfect to me. I'm not an MD, but I promote how to manage ADD side effects as a focal area of my research.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Yeah, thank you all.
Jim Marshall, you had your hand up.
Yes, Don Emily. How often are you getting your blood tested? Emily, CBC or potassium, et cetera, et cetera?
I've asked for it, and they've told me no need for it.
Oh, well, I disagree.
And I don't know how hard to push it. I've pushed it pretty hard as it is.
Push
Uh,
it, insist, because you are in control. Doctors are not in control. You don't give them a choice.
Jim Marshall, what were you on abiraterone?
Yes, I am. I get the blood
Okay,
test
so
every month, a battery of them.
all right, so that's a big difference because you need to be taking prednisone. You're at the risk of electrolyte imbalance, and in that particular patients on abiraterone, they really do need to be watching their electrolytes. In the case of the situation with Don, this might be a situation, but it's most acute for when you're either on doublet therapy with something like enzalutamide or an abiraterone. He's not on that yet.
Not yet.
Richard, I believe that he needs essentially a baseline at least to know if
Sure.
he should get it.
Yeah. Well, if
He
he
may
can get
not
that
need
when
it
he's
anyway every month, but at least he needs a baseline.
like that would probably be better when it's closer to when he starts on those drugs, if he starts on those drugs.
So I'd like to ask Len the Brains Trust really a question. What do we know what the recommendations are with respect to doublet for adjuvant radiation for ADT with adjuvant early salvage radiation?
Doublet being docetaxel plus second
No,
line.
ADT plus a second line anti-androgen.
Ah, I think for high risk and recurrent high risk, as Don's case is, I
Yeah.
think they are recommending second line anti-androgen.
Oh,
I believe so too. I mean, he's essentially a Gleason 9. I mean, if he's got the 5, so I wouldn't play around with it.
Could I get an explanation of that residual 5 pathology? I didn't
Yeah.
understand what that was.
Yeah. So what that means is that when they look at the pathology, and it's obviously a lot easier when they have the whole prostate that they've sliced up, they look for the most frequent pattern, the second most frequent pattern, and the third most frequent pattern. And normally when it's reported, it's only reported with the 2 most frequent patterns, like a 4+4, 4+3, 3+4. But occasionally they will report a third most frequent pattern. So what they're saying is that the third most frequent pattern that they saw was a 5. Does that explain, John?
Thank you. Yeah. Never heard it.
Yeah, I've heard it, but I don't hear it often.
They usually only report it. You hear it most with a 5. You don't You don't usually hear 3+3 with a tertiary 4, for example. But if they see a 5, they'll often report it as a tertiary 5, and usually you'll hear it in the context of a post pathology, of a surgical post pathology.
Can I say that when I got my when I looked at my pathology report and it said tertiary 5, I didn't pay any attention to it. But when the radiation oncologist was talking to me once, he said, "You know, you got a tertiary 5," and I said, "I don't know what that means." And he explained it to me, and I said, "Well, that doesn't sound very good at all." And he said, "Do you have someone to talk to?" He really said that to me. That's when I looked more deeply into the tertiary 5. Also, the fact that I had 80% pattern 4 in my 4+3. So my whole idea changed after that. The only thing I want to say to Don is I don't know how much weight you're lifting, but the cardiovascular exercise is important. but the more weights you lift, the better you'll feel. I guarantee.
Thank you.
And also,
Don,
Don,
have they done
I
genetic
understand the
testing on you?
conditions.
One at a time, please.
Don, you let me go first, Peter. You can go. You mentioned you're using an indoor bike, which is good, but it's not going to be helpful for your bone health. You need high impact weight bearing exercise. I should say weight bearing exercise, walking or running. So if you can't go outside, if it's too cold, maybe a gym or purchase a
Okay.
treadmill for indoors. Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, Don, I've already expressed my strong views. I mean, I was and am in your situation. I did a prostatectomy first for a different reason, but I have no regrets. You shouldn't either. I did follow up radiation 11 months later, 39 sessions, but the cat was out of the bag, just like you. I had seminal vesicle invasion, and I knew from that moment on that the cat was out of the bag, and it was just a matter of time before things were going to spread because it's in your system now. It's systemic. So at some point, it's going to start moving. And that's why I suggested getting a medical oncologist on board, because you're going to be in the long haul. You're not going to die tomorrow. You'll be fine for years. But you're going to need different kinds of treatments and different kinds of scans. You probably should get genetic testing if they haven't done that already. I mean, you're going to need a doctor who's really on their game with you and there for the long haul. So that's my take on this.
Yeah, Peter, they did do, by the way, they did do genetic testing on me, and I mentioned the Decipher test too. So I've got genomic and genetic, both of them.
Good. And
Genetic came back.
Nothing's shown up?
No, genetic came back clean all the way through.
Good.
Okay, good. Don, we're going to have to move on. It's 45 minutes into our session.
Am I in the right place, guys?
Absolutely. And
Okay.
we hope to see you again next
Okay.
week. And
It feels like I'm
anytime
hearing
after
my
that.
story. I appreciate it very much.
Len,
appreciate
before you leave, we put the name of the one doc that we do recommend at OHSU, who is Dr. Vuky, V-U-K-Y. I'm not sure if anybody in the group tonight is with her, but we do have several people who see her. She's very good. The link to her profile is there, and then David Muslin's added some additional um, information on her. Tom
She's an
Bear is there, but
she's
he's
an
not
she's
taking
an
mutation.
MO.
She's a genitourinary medical oncologist, yes.
Okay.
And then there are some other names we could come up with, but Bear isn't seeing anybody anymore. There's another lady who was good, but she's gone to the VA. So, right now, Vuki is the one that we tend to think of first at OHSU.
Okay.
She was
Thank
And
the
you.
do you
only
know
one.
where,
She was the only one that was available, by the way,
right?
on their website anyway.
Yeah, I think that's the case. Does everybody know how to use the chat window? It's those two little squares at the top right. Click on that, it'll open, and there's a bunch of information in there, including, by the way, tomorrow night's webinar, which I'll talk about later.
I found it.
All right, guys, let's move on to Nigel Woods. Nigel, tell us how old you are and where you live. I can't hear you. You have to unmute.
Are you having trouble
If you
unmuting?
if you click on the three dots in your picture frame, it should say unmute. Or maybe you can go down the bottom where you see icon of a microphone.
The other thing is, please be sure.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, sorry
Okay.
about that.
That's all right.
Not too tech savvy. I'm 71 years old. I live in Whistler, British Columbia, and I was recommended that I patch into your group through a friend of mine, Neil Sundstrom. And I've had about a 4-year history of prostate cancer, diagnosed in 2018 with a Gleason score of 8. Here in Vancouver, my doctor was Dr. Larry Goldenberg, and anyway, I decided to have my prostate removed, but there was a lengthy delay because of his personal reasons, and he wanted to put me on ADT. I really didn't want to do that. I went down to USC, and I had a HIFU surgery done. It knocked the cancer back to about a 3 PSA score. I should mention before that procedure, it was up around 14. The cancer came back, and anyway, I went to my doctor. Dr. Martin Gleave was recommended to me. Dr. Gleave said, he wouldn't operate on me until I'd had a PSMA test. They aren't available here in Canada except for an exceptionally long wait list. I got into the UCLA program. I don't know how I did it. It was just kind of a fluke, really. Had a PSMA test. They said it was limited to the prostate, except for one spot. I had the surgery done, and they removed my prostate. Apparently, the margins were clear. There's one spot outside the prostate that he tried to remove during the surgery. He never did it in the process. He nicked my ureter, had a hell of a time with my ureter. They put a stent in. Long story, a year of frustration and a lot of issues. It was a salvage prostatectomy that was done, right? And after that, after some time, my PSA scores started going up around the 3 or 4 level. Then they initiated I went to BC Cancer. They initiated a radiation program to the prostate bed and my whole pelvic area, 39 sessions in total.
When was that, Nigel?
That was back in, that would have been in 2020, I guess, right? That I had that, 2021, pardon me, 2021 I had it. And the subsequent PSA readings were, in fact, they hadn't knocked the cancer back. It was still up around the 3.2. And I had been, pardon me, I'll go back. I had been on a short-term 3-month ADT program, and subsequent to that, I've gone on subsequent to the radiation. I'm on ADT, Zoladex, and enzalutamide, and I've had my PSA levels have gone down over the last 9 months to 0.01. And I should mention I actually had a focused radiation treatment for 3 spots, one on my neck, which I could feel, another one was on my scapula, and another one on a lymph node in my armpit. And that was detected through another PSMA test I had done here in Canada privately. I've had a total of 3 PSMA tests done. The latest one was back in 2021, and the most recent PSA test I've had, which was just last week, the results came back. It had moved from 0.01 to 0.03, and I'm still on the ADT Zoladex and enzalutamide. I had just had my next round, so I've had 3 doses of 3 months of the drug. I'm in. I have a very active exercise program. The side effects largely from fatigue of the drugs. My exercise program, I have a physical trainer I go to 3 days a week. I probably exercise doing something every day, and it seems to work. But I am very concerned about what the next moves are. I have a radiation oncologist here in Vancouver. I'm waiting to hear from her after this last bump off the floor, if you will, from the last PSA test I had. So that's about 4.5 years in a capsule of what has gone on in my situation, and I think the U.S. tends to be further ahead in certain areas than Canada. But if you really start pushing Canada, they'll actually do something. For example, with those spots that were detected with the PSMA test, which I had done, I said, look, what's the harm in doing it? I'll pay for it. It costs about $3,000 here in Canada, and they found those 3 spots, and the level of care, call it standard of care here, was the ADT, and that's all. And I said, look, if you see the spots and they're in an area that can be treated, go after them. And I had to really push that. They did. Whether it did any good or not, I don't really know. But they they're they do listen, and I do listen to them too. And so I'm not dissatisfied, but right now I'm concerned that maybe the cancer's on the move again. If you think about it, 0.01 to 0.03, that's tripled in a month, right? So that's where I am, and I'm very happy to, from what I'm hearing from you, Joe, and I'm very happy to be part of this group, and I'm paying attention without a doubt, and I'll be an active member of this group and contribute where I can and listen very intently as well. So,
Nigel, I just want to clarify something. The enzalutamide and the Zoladex brought your PSA down to 0.01, and then subsequent
right.
to that, you had spot radiation to 3 areas, and then it
Yes.
went up. Is that right?
Yeah,
PSA went.
after the spot radiation, the enzalutamide for 6 months it was down at 0.01, and the last PSA test I had done, which was just last week, it's now gone up to 0.03.
Okay. I mean, I wouldn't consider that a tripling because the numbers are so low. We don't usually like to talk about ADT doubling time until you're up in maybe about the area of PSA of 1 or more. Below that, it's a little
Okay,
not quite as meaningful. But
that's a relief of some kind, because when it gets
so,
to the upper numbers, I had
so
gone
you,
through that doubling and tripling right
yeah,
before that, right? So
and you're still on
Where,
the enzalutamide, and your PSA has gone up. Is that right?
that's right. Yeah,
A little bit,
to
a little
the
bit.
from 0.01 to 0.03.
Okay. And so, how long do they plan on keeping you on the ADT and enzalutamide?
I think indefinitely.
Okay.
They haven't told me otherwise.
Right.
They took me. I was on. What was the other glutamide I was on beforehand? Just for a short while before the radiation. It was. Oh God, I
Apalutamide?
forget the name. Apalutamide. That's what it was. Yeah. And but I have been on this combination of Zoladex and enzalutamide for it's 9 months now, and I'm withstanding it fairly well. I would say my quality of life is quite good. So they have not
Great,
suggested needing it anytime soon.
great.
But
When
they've
What
said
about
it.
genetic testing?
I have not. I haven't. And what is genetic testing? I don't really understand it.
Well, they would take a sample of the tissue from your tumor, from the prostatectomy, or they could also do it from your blood. But your PSA is probably too low for that. So let's say they take the tissue from your prostatectomy, they send it off to a lab that sequences your genes to see if you have a mutation that is actionable. And by that, I mean there's a drug that can be effective against your particular mutation.
Okay. To my knowledge, I don't think they've done that.
It's
The, the,
probably
the
a good
other
idea.
thing, the,
Go
the
ahead,
other
Rick.
thing is they should also, you also want to know if you have any inherited mutations in your family. Do you have cancer in your family, Nigel?
Yes, I believe my father died of prostate cancer, but there's no records to
Right.
substantiate that.
Any other
I'm
cancers? Any other types of
my mom.
cancers?
My mom had thyroid cancer.
Okay. So you can get a test. Unfortunately, there is a free test, but you being in Canada, I don't think you're eligible for it. I don't think Promise, Richard Wassersuck, who lives in Vancouver and is going to say something in a minute, will know whether Promise extends to Canada or not. I don't think it does, but it's not an expensive test, and I don't know what the situation is in Canada, but you should get a germline test. Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, I don't know about whether that's available or not, but you're being treated in Vancouver. The best research, one of the major, if not the major center for genetics testing for prostate cancer is right here.
Right.
Wyatt is the geneticist who works at the prostate center. So who's your rad onc?
Dr. Sherry Chan, and it was previously Dr. Ernie Eigel.
Okay, so
He's on
Eigel, I
sabbatical
know. I
now.
don't know. I
Dr.
don't know
Sherry Chan is
Chan.
taking.
So, but you can say, listen, I'd like to get genetic screening done, and they will be able to get it done for you. They are at least point you in the right direction, and
One
that's a
thing I
reasonable thing
did
to
do,
do.
and I don't know if this is, yeah, one thing I did do, and it's just a voluntary group. I submitted my material to, gosh, without knowing the name of it, it's like a bank that is
At
a
Harvard,
volunteer
was it? Where
program.
was it? Where is it? Where is it at?
Yeah,
Harvard?
it's
Yeah,
here in
that's
Vancouver.
then you're already in the program.
It's a
Then you are in the
maybe
program.
it
That's
is. I
Alex
mean,
Wyatt's
they
study.
did it.
That's Alec Wyatt's study. I want to say one other thing though. I'm following up on what Len said. If your PSA goes from 0.01 to 0.03, or even if it went from 10 to 30, that looks like a doubling time, but you need two measurements. So my question was going to be, when are you getting the next PSA test? Rather than getting anxious, get another PSA test.
Well,
That's a
one of the
suggestion.
things I've been having the PSA test done once every 3 months, has been their protocol, and
Yeah, but you can move it up. You
that
can your GP, and with a rise after aggressive treatments that you've gone through, it would not be unreasonable for you to ask, can I get a PSA test a little earlier? And no harm in asking. They may say no.
yeah, I don't think they will. I mean, I've also got some issues that have, I don't know whether they were beforehand, but there's been, I've had blood tests done, and in several areas, my blood counts are low, hemoglobin and things like that have been flagged, that there's a blood specialist that's looking at what's going on. Dr. Chan ordered that, and whether or not it's part of the picture, I don't know, right? I have no idea. But
But all right,
it's
so that's worth
it's
doing
been
because
it's been
yeah.
initiated.
Yeah, the ADT can
and
move
she
you
was
from
going
a
to.
sort of, yeah, sorry. I was going to say the ADT moves you from a sort of a
Is that a
male
side effect?
hemoglobin. What? Yeah, that can be a side effect of the ADT.
Okay.
Anemia can be a side effect, but it can also not be a side effect. So she's doing the right thing. Dr. Chan's doing the right thing.
Okay.
But again, I'm saying, supporting what you're hearing here is you're in a position to ask for more aggressive testing if it isn't being done.
Okay.
And I
Right.
support that.
And the blood specialist, the hematologist, she wanted to move it up to testing every month, right? And since the first test, so I'm going to ask my oncologist to, hey, you're taking blood samples, take a PSA test at the same time, so it's monitored every
Exactly.
month,
Yep.
as opposed to
Exactly
every
right.
3 months. That was one of the
Yep.
things I was going to suggest, right?
Good.
And I don't think I'll have any. I don't think I'll have any pushback from it. Pretty
Right.
sure.
So, Nigel, do you have any questions for us that you'd like to bounce off the group before we move on?
Yeah. One thing I would like to ask is that for example, I've had 3 of these PSMA tests done, one in California and 2 here locally in Vancouver. And the last round I had done was after my radiation, right? And it showed these 3 spots. Now, it wasn't at the suggestion of my radiation oncologist, Dr. Zhang, and or I didn't have
What's your
a.
question? What's your question? I'm sorry
My
to
question,
tell you, but we've got to keep moving because we have a hard stop today.
my question is, should I be considering having another one of these PSMA tests done so we could see possibly if there's some more spots that are treatable? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not
So,
yet.
right,
PSA is awfully low.
you're
You
not
have
going to
to.
see
What was
very
that?
much. If then you're not going to see a lot since they've done one pretty recently and they've nailed them. You're not going to see much, and probably you're best to wait and see if your PSA rises. And once your PSA rises above the 0.2 level, that's that's going on for 10 times higher where it is now.
Okay.
Then you may get to see something, but you're not going to see a lot. One question I have for you: the PSMAs, were they all the same type of PSMA? Were they all gallium 68, PSMA 11, or were they Pylarify? Were they different?
They were the 68.
They were the 68. Okay.
The
So
Gambia
the answer
68.
is The answer is you're doing great. Stay where you are. Keep an eye. If you've got the gut to get your tests done monthly, get your PSA done monthly. If you don't have bad scanxiety, and and then if you start to see it move significantly, but remember what Richard has said to you and what Len said to you, these ultra sensitive tests are very unreliable at low levels, so they can swing around quite a bit. Don't worry about them, as Len says. You've got to really wait until it gets quite a bit higher. When it's in the
Okay.
0.1 digits and heading up to the 1.0, then it starts to mean something.
Okay. Good advice. Thank you very much. I
All right.
appreciate it.
Thank you,
Nigel,
Nigel.
Nigel, one quick question. You mentioned a punctured ureter, or do you have big problems as a result of that?
No, it was overcome finally at my the stent that I had put in was
Good.
eventually
Okay.
removed and a
Good.
balloon was put through and my system works. It's kind of unpredictable, but it's the system works. It works fine.
Good. That's a relief. Good going.
Okay. Thank you, Nigel. We're
Yeah,
going to
it
move
was.
on to Les,
Thank you.
shoulder up.
Okay, just a quick review of the whole situation. I was diagnosed 10 years ago with a Gleason 10, all cores 5+5, and involvement of both seminal vesicles. Had a bunch of stuff done in the meantime, whether radiation and surgery, whatever, up to last year when there was involvement in left testicle, had a orchiectomy, removed that, and the PSA had been rising prior to that, fairly slowly, but after the orchiectomy went down to 0.56 and was there for a short time and then started to rise fairly rapidly up to a PSA of 6.2, and they had done a PSMA scan and determined there was involvement in quite a bit of my torso, and the doctors recommended putting me on darolutamide and chemo. I started on the darolutamide fairly soon, offline, getting some from someone else until I could get a prescription for it, and started the ball rolling for the chemo. The chemo I won't start till tomorrow, but I had been on the darolutamide for almost a month now. I had asked the doctor for doing the chemo to get a blood test for the PSMA right before I started on the chemo, and he said, no, you got it back at the beginning of March. That's when it was 6.2. Well, I wanted one more immediate, so I got one this morning, and it was 7.3. Whoops, wrong. That was the beginning of this month. It was 7.3. Right before they were trying for the chemo. Well, I had one done this morning. Now, the only thing different was that I was on darolutamide for those 3-4 weeks. But this morning, it had gone down from 7.3 to 0.8. I had not expected that at all. What happened between the second of the month and now, just having taken darolutamide?
That's all you need.
Was that the first second line anti-androgen you've ever taken, Les?
Yes.
See, now you know why we kept pushing you to be on that a couple of years ago. But
Yeah,
anyway,
but I had never imagined that, I was hoping for a slight change, and I was just flabbergasted that it had gone
yeah,
down.
that's great. It's fantastic.
Les, I stayed on darolutamide right through my chemo.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
good. Yeah, I'm glad I did it.
Okay, well, good luck with the chemo. And do you have a question for us?
Well, the only question was, is that reasonable to go down that much on darolutamide? I just
Yes.
flabbergasted.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not atypical.
Okay, well, I'm not disappointed. Okay, thank you much.
Okay, good luck.
Thanks.
Let's go to Vic Paliasotti. Go ahead, Vic.
Yeah, hi. First question is real quick. Anybody experiencing shortages with abiraterone in the 250 milligram dosage?
Well, isn't that the dose that they sell it at?
Well, yeah, that would be the dose that they sell it as. I'm taking 1,000 milligrams a day,
Right.
but back in the middle of January, the mail order pharmacy that my MO hooked me up with called him up and said, hey, there's a nationwide shortage of 250 Abby. We want you to switch him over to 500 milligram Abby, two every day instead of 4 250s every day. The copay is 15 times higher. for the 500 than it was for the 250. And I've been trying to, look around and say, anybody else experiencing a 250 milligram shortage for Abby? Not hearing them.
I've heard that it's out there, that there is such a shortage. I've heard other men um, discuss it. It has not happened to me personally. Um, are you familiar with the other? Some men take one tablet with a low-fat breakfast.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that protocol, and my MO has suggested that might be something we'll explore if we can't, address this situation otherwise. But I'm just wondering why my pharmacy is having a hard time getting 250 Abby when others aren't.
So we heard something very interesting on Sunday. I'm going to let Dr. John relate it because he knows more about abiraterone having taken it than I do. But you want to tell Dennis Correa? Dennis Correa isn't on the call today, unfortunately. But Dr. John, you want to tell Dennis Correa's experience?
Well, Dennis takes a single 250 milligram tablet with food once a day and has had good success with it.
I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about where he found to get it and what it's costing him. Remember that?
Yeah. What was it? Costco, right?
Yep.
He found Costco had it available for $80 a month at one tablet a day.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that and Mark Cuban, those are my two go-tos, if I can't resolve this otherwise with the mail order pharmacy, for sure.
Yeah, definitely try Costco, try Walmart. You can shop around. Different pharmacies may have different.
Yeah. I'm just
There's going to
getting
be a
mixed
general
messages
shortage.
about whether a shortage actually exists or not for the 250. So it's still out for question, I guess. The other question I had was
there's also a thing called Janssen. I don't know if anybody here has ever been on it. It's a special abiraterone. It's only 125 milligrams. I have no idea what the copay would be like because none of us have been on it to my knowledge. But if you're really up against it and can't get 500s or 250s, you can always try these 125s.
Yeah, there's no problem getting the 500s. It's just the copay jumped 15 times. So
yeah, that's great. That's crazy.
Yeah, I thought so too. Other question I had was back before Pluvicto was approved by FDA, when I got my first consult with my GUMO, I was asking him what he would possibly suggest as my next step if I progressed or when I progressed from hormone sensitive to hormone resistant. And he said, looking over my situation, probably he'd want to try Provenge first off. And because like I said, Pluvicto had not yet been approved. So I was listening in on a panel from ASCO GU recently, and one of the docs on the panel made a pretty rough, what would you call it, review of Provenge. Like, in her opinion, never should have been approved in the first place. And I'm just curious if the Brain Trust had any opinions about that.
Which doctor was that, Vic?
I don't remember her name. She was one of several on a panelist, but she made a point of saying, "I don't approve of it. I thought the FDA never should have approved it."
I heard that presentation. Yeah.
What was that?
Ben said it was Dr. Hussein in Michigan, or in Chicago.
Yeah, what a surprise.
I heard that presentation too, and nobody decided to argue.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah. Now,
we know a number of well-respected medical oncologists who are big supporters of the use of Provenge, and the data that they present shows that if you begin Provenge when your PSA is low, like below 4, that you can extend your life as much as I saw, as much as 1.8 years. So it's certainly, if I were you, I would, as soon as I became castrate resistant, I would go for it.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I'm leaning towards for sure. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate the time.
Okay. Let's see.
one thing I
George,
just want to say about the Provenge, Vic, is that the docs, some of these docs like Maha Hussein, really fail to understand, in a sense, how it works. I mean, she would say she does, but it doesn't necessarily hold your PSA down. It sort of restrains the tumor. It doesn't kill the tumor. It rings it in. And so the tumor can keep growing, but it can't get beyond the space where it's in. And that's how it's always been. And so I disagree with her. And the evidence now that we're probably 12 years out or more with it, 13 years out, is that there is good evidence that it holds back the progress of the disease. But you just don't see it the way you see it with other treatments. So I feel like we should add that in spirit of full disclosure. The principal investigator is on our advisory board. He's a doc we love. He's a fantastic doc, and I'd go to him in a heartbeat. But I don't think I would go to Maha Hussein in a heartbeat. So I do have a bias.
Yeah, my thinking is, if I progress, if I start to see a PSA rise before Pluvicto becomes widespreadly available, why not get Provenge to hold me over until it does become more available?
yeah. Also, you've never had chemo, have you, Vic?
Oh yeah. I went on triplet therapy right after diagnosis.
Oh,
I was
okay.
de novo
That is
widespread bone only metastasis with
okay.
Gleason 910.
Okay.
How are you
And what is
doing, by the way? Is your PSA still low? You didn't tell us.
Yeah, the last one was, up until the last one, it was less than 0.01. The last one
Okay.
was 0.03. And me and the medical oncologist both said, at that sensitivity, who knows? I'll look again in 3 weeks and we'll see what it looks like then.
Good job. Great. Go
okay?
ahead,
We're going
Vic.
to go to George W. next.
Okay. Gleason 9, the recommendation was Lupron and radiation, but the overriding factor is because I have ulcerative colitis. So the radiation oncologist at Duke wanted to have a gastroenterologist review my situation to determine how severe it is. We did a sigmoidoscopy. She determined that it was a mild colitis, and she recommended that I go on to a daily dose of a suppository called Canasa continuously to knock it back as much as possible. Meanwhile, the radiation oncologist said, well, before I go into that, the medical oncologist, Harrison, is going to start me on Lupron on April 10th. Then the radiation oncologist said that he would like to have another sigmoidoscopy and review the colon situation in June before he embarks on radiation or the plan for radiation. And so that's where I'm at right now.
And what's your PSA right now, George?
It was 10, but since I'm taking dutasteride, they will double that and call it a 20.
Right. Well,
I'm
but
glad
you
you're at
started
Duke. I'm glad you're at
ADT, right?
Duke.
I feel
You
very
st-
comfortable because they're talking to each other. Um, and
you started ADT, didn't you, George?
No, April 10th.
April,
April
what are
10th.
they waiting for?
I don't know. It's just tough to get another appointment, to get in there sooner. Actually, I requested that, but that was the first date I could get in there.
I don't understand that. Anybody understand why they would wait till April 10?
Yeah,
What?
I mean, I think possibly, I'm not sure it makes sense, but possibly because they've pushed back the
The colitis.
radiation therapy to June, and they want to start it before the radiation therapy, and they're not thinking that they could be using this as a therapy rather than a supplement to the radiation. I mean, I'm guessing that's sort of their thinking. I mean, we're thinking, well, you could use ADT anyway. The ADT shouldn't have. I don't know. I'm not a doc, but I don't know that ADT would impact the colitis. Maybe Dr. John or Dr. Jack might know more about that. But I just think they're looking at a timing related to the radiation, Len. That's what I would guess. But the one thing I want to say, George, is I finally I finally feel like you're in decent care with a bunch of good docs who, like you say, are talking to each other. And whilst you may have to go all the way to Duke to get that done, I think it's worthwhile. I mean, would you agree?
Well, I have to thank you very much for your opinion as I floundered around on the previous meetings as to what to do and where to go. But I think since I landed at Duke with these doctors, I feel very comfortable that I'm in good hands. And thank you for it.
Good move. Good move, George.
George, I have a question. This is Jim Marshall. Have they given you the drug yet to counter testosterone flare?
No, no.
Make sure that you get it, and you
What's
get it probably, I think, about a week before
what's the drug?
you. Uh,
Bicalutamide.
Bicalutamide. Bicalutamide.
right, bicalutamide.
Bicalutamide. We'll put it in, and you should take it at least 10 to 15 days prior.
Okay.
Good point, Captain Jim.
All right. I'll ask that question.
Yeah, that'll probably lower your PSA as well.
Now, hold on a minute. One exception. Do you know what ADT, what LHRH drug they're giving you?
Lupron.
Okay, then you should ask them about the bicalutamide if they're giving you Lupron.
Okay. We're pushing that time right now.
Yep.
All right. I'll do that. I'll do that tonight.
All right. Thank you, George. We're going to
All
go
right.
on
Thank
to
you.
Jim Barnes.
Hi guys, sorry about the lighting here. Um, let's see. I'm 3 years into my journey here with prostate cancer. Been through SBRT, radiation, ADT, chemotherapy, and right now I'm on my. I've had 2 treatments of Pluvicto, and I'm scheduled for my 3rd treatment this coming Monday, April 3rd. Uh, After my last Pluvicto treatment, I was bouncing off the ceiling because I was so excited because my PSA had gone to less than 0.04. I guess they don't measure below that at Quest Diagnostics because I was having my test done in Florida. But I had my PSA tested yesterday and I was at 1.19. So it went from 0.044 to 1.19. 0.19 in a month. So I don't know, Rick, you had mentioned some wild variations in PSA numbers, and I'm just wondering if that's anything I ought to be concerned about, and or if the cancer has found a way to outsmart the Pluvicto at this juncture.
So I have two thoughts, Jim. The first is, when was the last time you had a PSMA scan?
Right at the time of the last Pluvicto treatment. They do a PSMA scan every time they do a Pluvicto treatment, just
And
to
when
make
was
sure
the
that there's avid PSMA available.
right? And when was the last time you had an FDG scan, a CT, regular CT FDG scan?
So they did the chest CT and the abdomen CT the last time I had the Pluvicto scan. I go in for the Pluvicto treatment. I go in for the treatment on Monday, then like Thursday I go back for scans.
Okay,
They also
so
do scans the day of the treatment.
right.
So
So my
those
question,
are the CT scans aren't showing anything in the soft tissue, so all that's clear. But these bone scan, actually, their remarks were that they saw it looked like a reduction in the tuber in the left acetabulum, where one of my cancers is. So
okay,
it's
but
they have a
are they comparing the scans to make sure that they're congruent, that all of your lesions are PSMA avid?
Could you repeat that question? I
Yes.
understand PSMA avid, and that's what they're looking for is PSMA avid lesions they're going to light up. They
Right,
do that
but
every time they get a Pluvicto scan.
right, but are they comparing these two scans to make sure that all the scans that show up on the FDG scan are also showing up on the PSMA scan?
Um,
Or do
that I don't know. And actually, once I got into the Pluvicto treatments, I was really handed over to the nuclear medicine guys. So my
okay,
GU oncologist really isn't closely involved with that. He's just getting the reports
okay.
that
So
come to us
so
there. So, but
you have
I'll
to
push for that. I mean, certainly.
you have to ask them, because you could have a situation like Mike Yancey has, where not all of his not all of his lesions are expressing PSMA. So they need to compare the two different types of scans to make sure all the scans they see on the non-PSMA scan are showing up on the PSMA scan. And they should be doing that, but that's the first thing, to make sure that there's what they call congruence between the two scans. You
Okay.
understand the concept, right, Jim?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Right.
with the CT scans and with the bone scan to match those up against the PSMA scan and
That's right. Yeah.
see if they match.
That's right. The second thing that occurs to me, because we've seen this quite a bit, and I think Herb had this issue, and hopefully somebody's going to do a Herb update before the end of this, is that it's not uncommon that you get a flare from the Pluvicto, and that the Pluvicto kills off the prostate cells throughout the body, but as they die, they express PSA. And so early on, you can see your PSA going the wrong way. So you don't really want to be relying so much on PSA, but you do want to rely on the scans. So if the scans are showing positive results, that's a lot more important than the PSA.
Okay. That's good to hear. As long as there's improvement in the scans. Yeah.
Anyone else have any comments on this or their own experience?
Okay, Jim, good luck with your next scan. Talk to your docs about another type of scan that might show lesions that the PSMA is not picking up.
Well, I think we're getting those scans now. I just don't think we've done the congruence analysis that Rick has alluded to.
Okay.
I think they're doing. I mean, they're doing CT scans, they're doing the bone scan, and then they're doing a PMSA scan. What other scan would?
Oh, they're doing a technetium bone scan. Do you know what type?
I believe so.
Okay, that's good.
Whole body bone scan.
Yeah, it's probably technetium. Okay, very good. Joel Blanchett, you're up next.
Okay, thank you, Len. After 6 months of Orgovix and 5 months of darolutamide, Dr. E has called me back to her office on 4 April, leaving on the night of 3 April and coming back on the 4th of April back to Virginia. And so last month, I got COVID in Florida for 3 weeks, and I got 2 negative PCR tests, and I'm feeling a lot better now. And it wasn't serious COVID because I had five of my shots, and I took a PSA just to see if the COVID had affected my prostate cancer treatment, and at best I could tell it did not. My last PSA last few days of February were 0.07. My PSA went down to 0.07. I'm taking another PSA test along with a big battery of tests tomorrow for Dr. E, and hopefully my PSA will have gone down some more. So I don't know what she's going to do with me yet, but I've got a bunch of questions for her, and that's about it for the update.
Okay, sounds like good news. Anybody have questions for Joel? Okay, thank you, Joel. You're doing good. Dr. Jack, you're up.
Okay, so my PSA went up to 2.02 from 1.69 a month ago, so it's getting aggressive. I had my PSMA, my third PSMA. This is the whole question about me being avid or not has been resolved. I'm totally avid. I have not only one subcarinal lymph node that's been documented to be positive by biopsy, but also lit up. But I have 2 more nodes, not parenchymal, in my same spot in the same zip code as my subcarinal. So I've got 3 nodes in my right lung. I've got 1 bone lesion on my left L4 pedicle on my lumbar spine, and I've got my posterior lateral left rib shows a lesion also. So in view of the fact that I've got atrial fib, unfortunately, I am reluctant or frightened to go ahead and take Multac. Last week, we talked about darolutamide by itself being an option since it's compatible with Multac, and we're not incompatible like androgen deprivation therapy, like Olinavix or Relogolix. I'd rather take the Relogolix because I'm concerned about the Nubequa by itself, but he said, let's do it. And he prescribed it, and I have to wait for some approval process, and then I will start it. But I'm reluctant for several reasons. I take Eliquis, and I read a lot about all the side effects, potential side effects. Maybe it's just, not seen as frequently as it appeared to be, but bleeding, all kinds of bleeding processes, nosebleeds, urinary tract bleeds, bowel bleeds, gut bleeds. And, with Eliquis, I could hemorrhage out. So I'm very frightened of taking the darolutamide with my Eliquis. So I'm trying to get ablated as soon as possible, cardiac ablation like I had 10 years ago, so I can not have to be as concerned about ultimately Multac and getting rid of Multac and hopefully Eliquis and thinking of getting a Watchman, if you know what that is. If you don't, let me know and I'll tell you what it is. But I'm concerned about the darolutamide and what it's going to do to my estrogen level also. And I'd like to ask you guys how you cover yourselves. Do you take tamoxifen if you take darolutamide by itself, or how do you manage not to get excessive amount of estrogen in your body, which can be, detrimental? You can get a coagulation problem. You can get, of course, the breast situation is obvious. And I wonder if you can answer that question. Some of you have been taking darolutamide for a long time. I know David, and I don't know who else has been taking the darolutamide. Two people just mentioned it just now.
Gee, it seems like Richard Wassersug would be a great person to comment on that if you have anything.
So I have not been on darolutamide. I'm not an MD, but you are. I'm just curious. Your area of medicine is oncology. What is your area of medicine? Hello?
What?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm just curious because you sound like a doctor, an MD. You are, or they referred to you as a doctor.
Yeah, many years, right?
What's your field?
Psychiatry.
Oh, psychiatry.
Sorry?
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm just curious about what your field was. So I don't want to. Yeah.
Well, I'm a
I'm interested.
Go
All
ahead.
right, I'm interested in the side effects of ADT. I'm going to study them. And we on our website, Life on ADT, we post papers, reviews. I do. And there was a paper recently. This is a long answer to that about what of the ADT agents have caused what type of cardiac effects. And this is of concern because the selling point for the LHRH antagonists, such as Firmagon and Orgolix, was that they were safer for cardiovascular stuff. It turns out that that depends. It appears to be that they actually increase the antagonist and can increase your risk of AFib. So that is something to be aware of. That's one paper that was published recently, and I think there's a review on my website that talks about that. As for the estrogen itself, the amount is, if you are taking a drug that's suppressing the testosterone in the first place, and you are taking as well an anti-androgen, there's not going to be enough testosterone to convert over to the estrogen to put you in a range of blood clot risk. I would think it's just too low. So I'm not seeing that in the literature. You may be onto something there, but I don't see anybody who's pointed out, hey, you take darolutamide, you're in better chance of getting a pulmonary thrombosis.
No,
I just haven't
Richard.
seen
Richard,
any
you
reference
hear
to
me.
that.
I'm not taking any Relugolix or any anti-androgen. I cannot take that. I'm on Multac, and it's I'm not. It doesn't feel safe in
All
terms
right,
of ranges.
but again, yeah, again, I don't know that there's an evidence that the anti-androgens themselves elevate estrogen to a point where they have an increased risk of the thromboembolic events or blood leak or clotting problems in general. That's all I can say. I don't have any data that I've
How do
seen
you
on that.
control the estrogen increase without an ADT drug?
All right, so personal story. My ADT is high dose estrogen, super high dose estrogen. Okay, I'm using that for ADT. That's a personal story. It's not in our book because it's on off-label use. I'm following a trial called the PATCH study in the UK. Many of you may have heard of this already. I've been on high-dose estrogen almost continuously for 20 years.
I see.
And I'm not, yes, I do get gynecomastia. There's no evidence, but the trick is you don't take it orally. You take it through the skin. You don't elevate the risk factors through the liver, through the blood clot cascade. The problem is if you take estrogen orally, that you get the surge of clotting factors.
I see. I just remember DES 25
Yeah,
years
no,
ago.
that's right. So that was the DS story for us too. Is the earliest anti-androgen, the earliest hormonal therapy we had was high-dose synthetic estrogen, taken orally, and it had a high blood clot risk. But if the blood clots that all starts with the clotting cascade through the liver, and as you know, the portal system takes everything you absorbed from the gut right to the liver. But if you take the estrogen through your skin, avoid oil, then you're not going to get that high risk. And you don't seem to get the high risk with any of the anti-androgens, except if you're taking something like Casodex, that's a biclutamide, it was mentioned earlier, 150 millimeters monotherapy, which is still used in Europe and a few other places, but we don't use it in North America. So unless you're taking a real high dose anti-androgen alone, there's no evidence that I know of a elevated blood clot risk or bleeding risk or whatever. That is, it doesn't seem to be cause an effect.
Literature talks a lot about bleeding risk for Nubequa, if you read about it.
Bleeding risk, but have they documented it, or are they just saying it is a risk factor presumed because
it's a higher risk factor than the other side effects?
Oh, that's interesting.
Look it up.
Darolutamide is not pitching that. I'll have to go look at that because I've not seen that mentioned. Do they mention it is higher for Nubeqa than it is for Xtandi
No,
or Durlita?
I didn't compare them. I just looked at Nubeqa.
Okay.
I didn't compare them.
Well, I will look into that.
I look at drugs.com. I use that to see how the mixture of the various drugs.
I'd go directly to the darolutamide website, that is Bayer's website, and see if they list that as a potential risk or an actual documented side effect, because I've not seen that.
And I wanted to ask Peter Kafka a question. Are you gone, Peter? Peter Kafka?
Yes, I'm still here.
Yeah, I emailed you, and Rick told me to email you and find out.
I haven't gotten back to you yet. I've been
no problem. I just wonder about, I'm seeing my radiation oncologist on Thursday, and he talks about SBRT zapping some of my lesions, and I'm wondering about proton, especially around the rib near the heart, and you've had some experience with it, I understand. I wonder if you
Yes. I'll email as soon as the meeting's over. I'll respond to your email. That's probably the best way to do it. How's that?
Fine.
Okay.
Well,
Jack, I was on darolutamide monotherapy for about 15 months. I never had any side effects. I know they were never measuring estrogen levels, so I can't speak to the effect on estrogen levels, but I had no side effects from monotherapy, darolutamide.
No side effects.
Nothing.
And I didn't either. I was on for probably 2 years plus. However, as soon as I started Keytruda, I started getting side effects, and I dropped the darolutamide. It was starting to bother me.
I see.
Seems like a lot depends on getting on whether you can get a successful ablation or not.
A successful what?
Ablation of the foci for your AFib.
I think so.
I think that will reassure you and all of us a lot about drug interactions if that can be done.
I'd like to get off the Multac and ultimately get off the Eliquis too, but I don't know. We'll see if I can get a Watchman. I know after you get a Watchman procedure, you have to get 45 days on Eliquis anyway, so it's going to be a slow process going through this ablation. You have to stay on Multac for a couple of weeks after an ablation. So it's not, you can't just.
A lot of these drug interactions are untested because we're on such weird stuff. As I said, who knew that Keytruda interfered with darolutamide? I mean, I didn't know that. Nobody knew that because there's so few people doing that kind of stuff.
Well, when you're going,
you got to watch what you're doing, watch what you're taking.
All right, let's move on. Richard, if you find anything about darolutamide and bleeding, let us know, please.
No.
Appreciate that. Let's go to Jeff Markey, if he's still with us.
Yep. What question about BAT? Anybody here experience it? Tried it to see if you can get second level androgen therapy to work again? No one? Wow.
Ken Anderson is getting BAT right now, but he's not here today.
Yeah, I mean, we there may be nobody in the room, but we have plenty of experience with BAT. Going back, as there's a webinar on our website. If you put in Denmead, you'll in the search box you'll find a webinar on BAT from 2017. We've been working with BAT for 5-6 years now, and it's sort of catching on, and more of the conventional docs are doing it. I mean, the bottom line for that I see with BAT and the literature, and there is, by the way, a recent paper which I can put in the chat window that Dr. Antarakis wrote along with Dr. Denmead, which I think is called A Patient's Guide to BAT. Have you seen that, Jeff?
No, I haven't, but I will definitely go take a look at it.
Okay,
How
so
high?
I'll put it in there. But I
How
think that
high a PSA is acceptable?
one of us at a time, Jeff. I think one of the things that you have to appreciate about BAT, it is very much a temporary fix. It doesn't work for a long time. It seems to keep your cancer and your PSA under control for 8 to 12 months, but it really doesn't last beyond that. And they don't even claim that it has longer term effects. So you're looking at something that may work on a temporary basis, and the guys who are using it are the guys who don't have anything else to turn to.
Ah, so having a PARP inhibitor might be a better idea than BAT, you're saying?
Well, it all depends. PARP inhibitor is a possibility, but again, that's controversial. But certainly, do you carry? I can't remember. You carry BRCA? You do, don't you?
Oh yeah, BRCA2. Yeah.
Yeah, and definitely a PARP inhibitor is going to be if it were me, I'd go to the PARP inhibitor before I went to BAT, for sure.
Okay. Okay. How high can your PSA go with the BAT
I don't
before
know.
you say enough?
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
the thing is that it's going to go up during the periods you're on the testosterone, and it's going to come down for
Yeah.
when you're on the ADT. And I don't know the fluctuations. Maybe Len or John or Ben may know how much it
What about
fluctuates.
Richard Wasserstein?
Yeah, I mean, when you're getting to situations like that, you don't worry about the PSA as a specific number. You worry about whether you're having symptomatic Mets. I mean, if you have any
Yeah.
sign of a symptomatic Met, then you're not in good shape, and it's time to get off the BAT protocol.
Yeah.
Were they saying that it can be difficult? I mean, I know you get the testosterone rush, I think, but they were saying there are some side effects and difficulty with pain or muscle cramps or something with the BAT.
Yes, Ken Anderson has a lot of muscle cramp problems with it, and it's usually younger guys that I know that are doing it. I mean, I don't think my doc would ever go for me using it or anything like that. I mean, younger guys feel some of the benefit of some more testosterone in their system for a week or two, but then I don't know. I mean, I asked my Antonarakis in my situation whether it was appropriate, and he kind of shook his head.
I'll offer one, though, sort of look at the future. BAT may actually be more effective early on, but who wants to risk it? I mean, that is as an experimental drug, experimental protocol, it may actually be more effective early, but I don't know whether they could even run an experiment, get enough patients to sign on for such a study. We don't know.
Thank you.
Okay, we'd like to go to Kurt next.
Yeah, just a quick, my genetic testing results are in. So germline testing is clean, but they found a interesting mutation in the prostate cancer. It is a BRAF mutation, which is quite rare in prostate cancer, less than 1.4%. But very common in melanoma.
In what? Sorry,
in
common
melanoma.
Yeah, and in lung too. It's
Okay.
well known in lung, and there are a bunch of treatments. We've had one guy that I can think of who had BRAF, but they didn't find a good treatment for him. But yes, it is very rare. But you're not the first guy on here with BRAF, but
Oh,
it's
shucks, I was
very
trying to be
rare.
a trail breaker.
I'm sorry.
So that's the story. Next PSA test will be in a month, so we'll find out then if my undetectable continues. So.
Now, aren't you? Um, are you with Antennarakis?
Yep.
And what does he say about does he say the BRAF is actionable? And if so, what's he talking about? Or have you reviewed it yet with him? We'd love to hear. Yeah, what does he say?
I did review it with him. There is, he talked about, well, basically so far my prostate cancer is castration sensitive, right? So if it, or I like to think of it as gone. So if it's not gone and it comes back after my ADT ends, which will wear off about the end of June, then we'll do follow-up PSAs. If the PSA starts rising at that point, then we could either do more ADT because it's so far been ADT sensitive, or there is a specific chemotherapy drug that he talked about for melanoma, dabrafenib, DABRAFDNIB. That they use for melanoma type of cancers, and he thought that would be an effective route if that's necessary.
Wow. Okay. So, that's what I really was interested to hear, whether in fact somebody who has prostate cancer with a BRAF mutation has any precision medicine options, and he seems to think that there is. If you could put that in the chat window, the name of that, the chemo, it would just be helpful.
Sure.
Know that the last guy that we had with BRAF, they found it out very late. It wasn't your situation. And this was probably 3 years ago. I think if I remember correctly, and I'll look, I think it was Barbara Discant's husband, Barry. And but this is exactly why we encouraged you to get the analysis, and why the analysis is so important, because there are drugs out there if you happen to carry certain mutations. And so this is a fantastic example of that.
Yep.
Okay, looks like we've got time for you, Peter.
Well, I'd rather hear. I don't have much to say. I'd rather hear a Herb update if anybody has been in touch with him.
Rick, I imagine you're best qualified for that.
Well, it might be David Muslin, because I'm getting everything third hand.
Okay, David.
David, you want to start, and I'll fill in the gaps?
Rick, go ahead. You go, because you have a much better handle on medically than I do. Go ahead, please.
Okay. So I don't believe we've heard anything since Sunday. As of Sunday, Herb was in the ICU with a pulmonary embolism that is probably related to this Cushing syndrome. That's the bad news. The good news is, when we happened to have dinner with Dennis Correa on Sunday night, he reminded us that he'd been in the ICU with a pulmonary embolism as a result of his chemotherapy and had come out and done subsequently well. So we shouldn't be concerned. And my own source, who treats neuroendocrine cancers, also said that as long as they're watching over the pulmonary embolism and treating it right, and they have his cortisol under control, that is not going to kill him. He is still in the NIH. My editorial comment is that they're still treating him like a lab rat at the NIH, and his wife at some point even mentioned that everything they do in the NIH seems to have to lead to a research paper. On Monday, we were advised that they were going to biopsy the lung lesion, which we've been trying to get done for the last 4 weeks or more, and we wanted to have him to do that before he went into the NIH, but he only was able to get a liver biopsy. The irony in that is that, again, our doc from our advisory board says once they saw the neuroendocrine cancer in the liver, they didn't need to go after the lung anymore. So why are we putting him through this procedure? I can only think because the NIH didn't do the liver biopsy. It was done at Sibley, which is part of Hopkins. So now they've got to go through and they've got to do their own biopsy, and it's unnecessary. So the question is, why the heck is he still in the NIH? What has been recommended is they get carboplatin into him as soon as they possibly can. Again, our doc said she would treat it just initially with carboplatin. She would, because of his age and his health, she would not add etoposide yet, and she would go with a lower dose of carboplatin to see how he tolerates it, and if he responds well, hold on with that. If he doesn't respond well enough, add a little bit. None of that is being done. The NIH said they want to see the results of the lung biopsy before they do anything. They're also talking about non-chemo treatments, but again, I mean, I'm aware of one non-chemo treatment, which is called lutetium-177 dotatate, which is very similar to the Pluvicto, except that it is attracted to chromatin, which is expressed on neuroendocrine cells. Is it chromatin? Am I right, Len? Chromatin, is that what it is?
Well, chromatin is just chromosome material in every cell, so I'm not sure where you're going with that. But
Chromogranin
A? Is it chromogranin? It might be chromogranin that is.
That's a biomarker for neuroendocrine. Yeah.
Right. So the lutetium dotatate is attracted to the chromogranin A and kills the cell in the same way that in prostate cancer it's attracted to PSMA. And this is an approved treatment. But she said that she would not use the lutetium dotatate before the chemotherapy. So again, the problem we're having, to be honest, is that the person navigating has a conflict of interest. And so we don't think he's getting navigated, but but we can't navigate him the way that we feel would offer the best treatment. And that's the update that I have. And it's very upsetting.
I just texted
Anything
Nancy.
you want to add, David?
I actually talked to Herb live on Sunday for just about 30 seconds, but he was sleeping. He woke up from this deep sleep. I talked to him. He said hello, and he loves everybody here. He sends everybody his best wishes, and he was out again. And then I just texted Nancy for an update. So if I hear something, I'll forward it on to everybody.
All right. Thank you, David. We all miss Herb. We all wish him well. Hope he can join us again sometime soon. Well, guys, that wraps it up.
We have we can go at least for another 10 minutes until quarter
Peter?
after the hour. Peter, if you want to take the time to update us, we've still got everybody here. Why don't we give you some time?
I don't really need much, but so my I was kind of messing around with my Keytruda infusions because it was working, and so I said, well, why not go stretch it out instead of doing 3 weeks, go to 6 weeks, and then that didn't seem to be working well, so I went to 4 weeks. So bottom line is I'm back down to the standard treatment of every 3 weeks because my PSA was just moving in the wrong direction. Not radically, but enough to get my attention and my doc's attention. So that's where I am every 3 weeks. So I'm in the middle of this thing now. Did one a week ago Friday. I'll do one a week from Friday again. So other than that, I'm feeling fine.
How are the side effects?
Not too bad. A little bit of intestinal stuff, but it's not. So far, I'm doing fine. You have to monitor. You got to do blood work, just like chemo, just before the infusion every time, and watch things that are odd. Things like your thyroid. You got to watch. You got to watch your pancreatic enzymes. You got to watch your liver enzymes, because immunotherapy can mess with a lot of functions. So you got to watch carefully.
Okay. Anybody got any questions for our man on Maui?
Well, thank God for insurance. I mean, this is $10,000 every 3 weeks. It's crazy.
Wow.
I don't know. I mean, my heart goes out to guys who don't have insurance or don't have the coverage I do.
Yeah. Of course, that 10 grand is not what is actually getting paid.
No, that's actually getting paid. That's actually getting paid. It's actually 30 grand.
Oh, okay. Okay. So the sticker price is 30 grand. Is that what you're saying?
Every 3 weeks, yeah.
Oh, blimey.
And Peter, I know you're not taking ADT, but are you taking Daro?
No, nothing else. Just immunotherapy.
All right. Continued good luck with that. And I'm going to check it out, Rick, unless you want to continue.
Fantastic. No, I think we should all give a good round of thumbs up. There's a react at the bottom, and you can click on that, and there's a thumbs up in there. And I think everybody should give Len a thumbs up for finishing on time, getting through everybody. I knew it. Len's the only one of us who can do it. He's the only one who can do it. Hold on, we got 2 people who have their hands up now. They're going to spoil your record. 3 people who have their hands
that's not
up.
fair,
I don't know
guys.
what they want.
All right, I guess we got to check them out. Go ahead, Gary. Got to be good, Gary.
I meant to give you a thumbs up.
Oh, and you put your whole hand up. Okay. All right, bless you, brother. George, George, you had your hand up.
The mouse got me.
And the thumb up. Kirk, I'm curious. Kirk, have you asked Antennarakis whether he's ever had another patient with your profile, with your gene mutation?
He didn't say, but I think he would have had he had one. So my assumption is no.
Yeah, I think he's only had one person like me with my mutation, because I started my immunotherapy with him last summer, and I'll be back there again in June.
Guys, I'm going to say good night, and we'll see you
Good night,
next week.
everybody.
Night.
Right.
Good night.